Mr. Transformers 96 here with another video review. This time I'm going to be doing another Marvel Legends ranking, and I'm ranking the Demogoblin Build-A-Figure wave, which is the Spider-Man series, within the first two waves of 2020. So yeah, this is the wave as a whole, a very strange kind of mixed bag wave. You've got two game characters, you have four comic characters, and then you have one Build-A-Figure who is basically a normal figure size. However, he comes with accessories that make him a little bit extra. Because of that, usually I don't include Build-A-Figures in my ranking. The only times that I do is if they are like the same, they're on the same playing field as the actual figures in the wave. And with this one, he's basically a normal figure, and therefore I will be including him in the ranking. But I am keeping him into consideration that he is a Build-A-Figure compared to these others that are just regular figures. But let's get started here with my least favorite figure, ranking up to my favorite figure of the wave. Alright, in last place we have the Spider Armor Mark II. This is a figure that didn't interest me too much, to be perfectly honest. I bought him for the Build-A-Figure piece, and the Build-A-Figure piece only. Yeah, overall I think that it's kind of just a weak figure. If you're a big fan of this design of the suit from the video game, then you might love this. But just as a figure goes, and with somebody who's not connected to the design of the suit, because I never played the video game, I don't find it super interesting. It has some interesting detail in it. However, there's just it looks like a very mixed mash. It looks like a hockey team Spider-Man, in my opinion. It looks like he's wearing, like, kind of like the Dark Knight reference, but it actually looks like he's wearing like hockey uniform type of stuff. It's just not something that interests me too much. There's some paint issues that I have with it, especially on the torso towards the bottom of that Spider-Man logo. There's some red splotches in it. There's some black splotches in the red. And then I think that the mix of the coloring isn't great too. The chest and the head have a nice glossy red to them. They look really good. But then the rest of the red on the figure is very plain and dull. The upper thigh red is almost like a bright pink, and then the red beneath it when the thighs start is more of a darker red. So like it's a weird mix. Like I feel these reds should match, but they don't. Overall, the figure I think is quite weak. It's just not something that I find interesting, and I think that the design of it is rather plain as well. In sixth place, we have the Velocity suit. I know the two video game ones are kind of my least favorite because I don't have a connection with them, but I also just am not a big fan of their designs. Now, I will say that the Velocity suit one is the one that I had zero interest in. The Mark II, the Armor Mark II, that was the one that I kind of thought looked interesting before, I got it in person. But to be honest, the Mark II let me down, and the Velocity one was more impressive. I was actually like kind of impressed with the look of this. I don't think that it's great by any means, but I think that it has some interesting design pieces to it. It's very armor-like. Like, this actually feels like an armored suit, especially in the torso, which I like. And I also like the spider design. I like the fact that it runs kind of throughout his body, and it's all sculpted. None of that is just painted, which I really like, so I do appreciate the sculpting detail on him. As a whole, though, I'm not in love with it, but I do think that it's a much better figure than the Mark II armor one. And I also think that its web accessory is more interesting, and you can use that for even just normal Spider-Man figures, too, when, to put them on his enemies. So I think that this is far better than the Mark II. However, it's not great in all honesty. Next up, we have the Superior Octopus, so kind of the Dr. Octopus mix of Spider-Man. It's kind of an interesting design. I know all the Spider-Mans are my least favorite of the wave, and that's usually because there's so many Spider-Man figures that they're kind of boring. However, when it comes to Spider-Man figures, this is a very unique one. I love it. I'm a big Spider-Man villain fan, so to have like a mixture of Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus is really cool looking. I think that the tentacles themselves look great. They don't have any articulation. They're a little bit of softer plastic, but I think that they look really cool. They look very fluid. They look like they're waving around. These would be perfect, like octopus arms, if you were to do a custom of the Dr. Octopus or his wife, actually, from the Miles Morales Into the Spider-Verse film. These would be great tentacles for that, for a custom for that. But overall, I really like the design of this. The tentacles are awesome. The figure itself is quite nice looking, a little bit plain in its design. However, I think that the butterfly joints on it are great, and I love the fact that it has a bulge-jointed upper torso. You never see that with Spider-Man figures. They always have an ab crunch, so that's very unique, and I like that a lot. And the coloring, I think, is great. I think the black has a nice kind of gloss to it. It's a little bit shinier, but then you have this really nice, clean, matte-looking light gray. It looks wonderful. There's no chips in it whatsoever. There's no paint bleeding. It's all really nicely made. And then the octopus symbol in the chest, in almost like a glow-in-the-dark green, I think looks awesome. I don't actually think that this glows in the dark. However, sometimes when I look at it, I almost think it glows in the dark. Like, I'm not sure. It has such a reflective look to it that it gives a glowing kind of effect, even in broad daylight. Even just looking at it here, it almost looks like it's glowing, which is really unique. So I overall really like the Spider-Man figure, to be honest. I think it's one of the best Spider-Man figures that they've produced in a while. Alright, and taking the 4th spot, we have the Demogoblin, ranking relatively low for the Build-A-Figure, in all honesty. I think that this figure, as a figure himself, he's cool. If he was a normal figure in this wave, I think he was great, because the glider is really neat. I like the fire glider, and I think that the way that it attaches to its flight stand is wonderful. It's very sturdy, and I like that a lot. Now, when you get to the actual figure himself, I think that's where this figure goes downhill, to be honest. The figure looks fine, but he reuses a lot of pieces, and I find that really annoying because, you know, every now and then, most of the time Build-A-Figures are new sculpts, but every now and then a Build-A-Figure reuses some pieces from another Build-A-Figure, and if it makes sense, it makes sense. If not, you know, then it's an issue. But with this guy, the pieces that he reuses make sense, but he's reusing them from just normal figures, and that is not okay. Like, it's not good to get a Build-A-Figure that reuses pieces from just an average figure, because then it makes this guy not feel that special. And overall, kind of disappointing. I think that he should be just a normal figure in the wave. Had they just produced this figure without the flight stand and just given you the glider, kind of like they did with the Hobgoblin and Green Goblin, I think that that would have been perfectly acceptable. The little glider piece is the flight stand is the only extra piece I think that you get for him being a Build-A-Figure. Now, I love the face sculpt. I think the face sculpt is really good, so that does help him quite a bit. But overall, as a figure, I think that he's relatively plain. Not a ton of texture going on with him outside of the arms, which are reused, and the face. The rest of him, he's a very clean sculpt. There's not a ton going on. So as a Build-A-Figure, I do find him disappointing. As a regular figure, he's cool, but as a Build-A-Figure, I do find him disappointing. And taking the bronze spot, we have Vulture. Now, this was actually incredibly hard. These next 3, I couldn't, for the longest time, decide how to rank them. I could see all of them being number 1, I could see all of them being number 3. It was very difficult to compare them, mainly because I like them all a ton, but for very different reasons. But even though it was difficult, I did have to actually rank them. However, these 3 are almost interchangeable. I like them just as much and for all different reasons. But I did decide to go with Vulture number 3. Mainly, I put him in number 3 because the costume itself is a very plain design. Obviously, there's some nice kind of, they did an interesting technique to show the lines in his suit. I think that that's kind of unique, the way that they actually painted that. However, it's all just painting. The face sculpt, the neck piece is great, and then the wings are really cool too, and he's a really good, sturdy, great looking figure. However, because of his kind of plain design, costume-wise, that's why I decided to put him as number 3. But overall, I really love this figure. This was the one that I was most looking forward to in the wave, just because I'm a big Spider-Man villain fan. He's a classic Spider-Man villain, and although I had a version of Vulture, he wasn't very classic, and getting this classic version now completes like my classic Sinister 6, which is super exciting. But this is a great figure overall, and yeah, wonderful. And in second place, we have the White Rabbit. Again, really considered putting her as number 1, however, decided to go with number 2. Great figure, really good. I think the hair sculpt is fantastic. She has got so much detail in the hair, so much sculpting and painting detail, and the kind of wind-struck kind of hair sculpt is really cool. I think it looks wonderful. I think that the ears are really neat. The face makeup is very cool. The costume design, I think, is very unique and uses a lot of new parts, and some parts that we've seen before, but uses them in a very interesting way. Overall, a really cool figure. Really love this one. This, figure-wise, was the one that I was most looking forward to in the wave. Vulture, character-wise, was the one I was most looking forward to. But as the figure herself, she looked really cool and definitely one that I wanted to get. And my favorite figure of the Marvel Legends Demogoblin wave is going to have to be Shang-Chi, actually. This was, again, surprising to me, and again, you know, I've really had a lot of trouble deciding between these first three. But this figure is really fantastic. It is a figure that comes with a slew of accessories, every single hand that you could possibly want for a lot of fun poses. He's great. He has wonderful articulation with an butterfly joint, and then obviously of his character being martial arts heavy, he's just so much fun to pose, and really a solid figure. Like, they could have made this figure very simple. It could have just been the normal figure, you know, with no accessories really, maybe one thing of nunchucks, but then just had standard hands. But instead they gave you like I think we got like 4 or 5 sets of hands. That's a ton. And then we did get 2 nunchuck sets, which is super cool. The figure overall is great, has a really nice head sculpt too, and then the pants are very uniquely sculpted. I believe that this is a new sculpt pants-wise. I've never seen that before. And overall, it just looks great. I'm very much looking forward to the Shang-Chi film, especially with him taking on the Mandarin. So I think that this figure is fantastic, though. It's a ton of fun, so many cool poses you can put him in, and so many different just pose possibilities as well. So overall, this is a very interesting wave. It's a mixed bag in my opinion. I'm not huge on having game characters in the wave, to be honest, but I'm sure that there's some people that are really happy about that. But I do think that they're the weakest links kind of by far. I think the comic figures are all pretty good though. I really do like all the 4 comic figures in the wave. I think are great. I really don't have any problems with them. However, their characters are very different. Like you've got one kind of classic Spider-Man villain. You have one kind of combination, very modern Spider-Man and a villain. You have a very obscure Spider-Man villain, and then you have Shang-Chi, who is not super Spider-Man-like. He's kind of Spider-Man adjacent. So it's an odd mixed bag. And then the Build-A-Figure is kind of the weak point of the wave, I'd say, just because he's not that Build-A-Figure like. He's a little bit more simple, and overall he is nice, but as a Build-A-Figure, I don't think that he's fantastic. So this is a weird wave for me. I don't by any means dislike the wave, but I don't know how much I love it, to be honest. I think that out of the 2 waves to start off 2020, the Fantastic Four one is definitely the better suited as an entire wave. However, there are some great additions to this wave, so don't get me wrong. But there you go. That's my thoughts on this Marvel Legends wave, with the Demogoblin as the Build-A-Figure. Let me know what you guys think of how I rank the figures. I'd love to hear your guys' ranking on them, and thanks so much for watching.